what is today, August 31st of 2022. We have a short agenda, but I believe we will start with considering some changes to the rules of procedure.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Metropolitan Short-Term Rental Board of Appeals is now in session for the regularly scheduled meeting of August 31st, 2022. I am Bonnie McBroom III, Short-Term Rental Property Chief at Metro Codes, and I will be presenting the cases to the board for review in today's public hearing. At this time, I would ask everyone to either turn off their cell phones or put them on silence as to not disrupt today's meeting. The procedure will be for staff to introduce the case record. At the conclusion of the presentation, the appellant will present their case to the board along with any person in support. If there is opposition to the case, the board will then hear from those parties. After the opposition has presented their testimony, the appellant will have a period of time for rebuttal. The board in their rules provides the appellant in cases without opposition 5 minutes for the appellant to present their case. In contested cases, the board provides 10 minutes for each side to present their testimony. Should the appellant wish to provide rebuttal testimony, the appellant should reserve some of their allotted 10 minutes for rebuttal. The Metro Code requires that these proceedings be taped. Therefore, it is imperative that anyone addressing the board come forward, speak into the microphone, identify yourself, and then make your presentation. It should be noted that if it is found that anyone has presented false or misleading testimony to the board that would have affected the board's decision, any approval may be revoked at a later date by means of a show cause hearing. The board will go through the cases set for the public hearing today. After both sides of the case presentations are made, the board will discuss and vote on the case. The board is vested with the power to act on the cases before us today under the provisions as outlined in section 6.28.035 in the Metropolitan Code. The code requires four members of the seven-member board to be present to constitute a quorum. The board rules require a majority vote in the affirmative of the members present to grant the appellant's application. In the event that a majority vote is not achieved, the case will remain on the board's agenda for the next regularly scheduled public hearing. Applications that fail to receive a majority affirmative vote in the next regularly scheduled public hearing shall be deemed denied by operation of law. The appellant or any aggrieved property owner may request a rehearing within 60 days of this public hearing. Further, the appellant or any aggrieved property owner may also appeal the board's decision to Chancery Court within the same 60-day period. After that time has elapsed, the board's decision becomes final and no further action can be taken. If you are an appellant and your case is granted, it will be necessary for you to obtain the permit for which you have applied. It should be noted that the permit must be obtained within 2 years of the board's approval to remain valid. I submit the case has been filed in proper order. The appellants have been notified by certified mail as required by the code, and all affected property owners have been notified by legal notification. The sign requirements have been met as required by the code. At this time, we see if there are any elected officials that would care to address the board. Seeing none, Chairman Caputo, you've chosen to address the proposed rules changes as the first item on the agenda. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The current rules read as follows. Number 5, conflict of interest. Submittals in order to provide information to the board in a timely manner. Any documentation that appellants or opponents want the member of the board to read prior to the public hearing must be received by the staff or the board no later than 5 days prior to public hearing. Any documentation the applicant wishes to provide to the board after the deadline can be presented to the board members by providing 8 copies at the public hearing. However, the board may elect to defer cases in order to review the materials received after the deadline. The proposed change reads as follows. Number 5, conflict of interest. D, submittals. In order to provide information to the board in a timely manner, any documentation that appellants want the members of the board to read prior to the public hearing must be received by the staff or the board no later than 14 days prior to the public hearing. Documentation that opponents want a member of the board to read prior to the public hearing must be received by the staff of the board no later than 5 days prior to the public hearing. Documentation the applicant or opponents wish to provide to the board after the deadline can be presented to the board members by providing 8 copies at the public hearing. However, the board may elect to defer cases in order to review materials received after the deadline. Do you wish to vote on the changes individually or together?
I believe individually. Sound good? Yeah. All right, so let's address this one first. So the material change would be that the appellants have to get their materials in 2 weeks in advance and opponents 5 days in advance. I don't think that I realized that it already stood that way, because we do seem to get things close to the hearing day. So, but if this second paragraph here on the proposed changes seems to have some leeway, that if it comes in within 5 days or within 14 days and they bring enough copies for us, we're given leave to consider those. Am I reading this correctly, the spirit of it?
To consider the printed copies that are presented at the board meeting, or you can choose to defer to the next meeting to give you time to read the material.
Okay.
One question I had is so the existing rule is 5 days. So if a neighbor sends an email, say 72 hours before a hearing, will that not appear in our packet, or is this like documentation outside of an email in opposition or support?
As the rule change states, it would be they would have until 5 days prior to the meeting.
Okay. The only thing that I would say is that that's, to my knowledge, sort of a different window than we use for planning, and I believe BZA, in terms of like when you need to get an email in for it to make its way to the packet.
Well, as it currently stands, it is 5 days, as the current rule reads. However, if the request is made by the person submitting the opposition or support, that copies be made and presented to the board, that can be done just as outlined in the rules.
Okay. I'm just thinking from like a, constituent engagement aspect. Like, a lot of times folks will kind of get active around these, like as the date is approaching, and neighbors will start talking to each other and get these emails sent in. So I actually would, I didn't realize that it was 5 days in the rules right now, and I think that that's something that we might want to take a closer look at. Is there any, would 1 day create hurdles or a burden for staff?
Yes, it could definitely do that, because it could have an effect upon the case once the case summary has been written and submitted to the board. Nonetheless, as the rules state currently, and as they would state in the proposed change, printed copies of these could be brought to the board meeting and presented to the board members. You would at that time have the opportunity to review the material at the hearing or just prior to, or you'd be able to defer the case in order to review the information that's been presented and then take it up at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. And that's how it currently stands.
Thank you. Is it feasible to do like what planning has begun doing, where all of the support and opposition emails up until I think 24 hours or noon the day before the hearing, I forget where their cutoff is, but those are available online for the public and the board members and the appellant to review? Is that feasible?
I'll have to defer to legal.
That's really kind of an ITS question. I'm not sure how planning does that, but I'm sure the staff could research whether or not that's something they could tap into also. Planning probably uses a SharePoint site that they've worked out with ITS to allow that to be posted. So I don't know any reason legally that it would be prohibited. It just might be a technological question that staff needs to work out.
I tend to favor allowing more time to, if there's evidence to be presented that, could be determinative in the case, I'd rather hear it than not, or, have someone appeal to Chancery Court and, have us be found acting arbitrarily because we've looked at, I know in previous cases, we've looked at evidence that's presented on the day of that may not have been provided in the packet. If there's additional information in that, sometimes can have an impact on the decision. So I tend to favor allowing as much time as possible.
I guess I would ask, what is the, did this proposed rule change come from staff?
Yes, it did.
Okay. So presently, the appellant in opposition has 5 days. This would give the appellant 14 days.
We're restricted to 14 days.
Yeah, it would,
Yeah.
but I mean, they're also, they can defer.
Right.
Sure.
The appellant can always defer if they have material. I'm more personally concerned about this issue of folks emailing with support or opposition, neighbors, and that being as far out as 5 days, which is the present rule. So
Right.
this rule change doesn't make that any worse. But I guess.
I think, Sean, I agree with you. I was a little surprised to see that that's where the rule stood, because I don't know that we have been getting reach. The outreach that we've been getting from the community does tend to roll in the days leading up to the hearing. So I'm not sure that it would, since the rule is, I'm not saying not being honored, but there seems to be a method by which these electronic comments are reaching us anyway. I'm not sure that changing the rule that would restrict the appellant to, who has, they have the majority of the documentation, I suppose. That's really the issue, is get staff having an opportunity to get that taken care of. I don't know, maybe we shall we table this one until we can have some communication with staff about maybe having a SharePoint site that will allow those things to become available in electronic sense?
Or just kind of figure out what are some ITS solutions or ideas. I mean, like there's if the email just that we put on the sign, I forget what it is. I don't know if that could just be forwarded directly to all of our emails, like each thing that comes in.
Right.
Or if the volume there, if there's tons of stuff coming from all different directions there that we don't want forwarded to us, like, I don't know, but I would like to take a look at that question specifically. So,
One other thing that's not, we don't get much many proponents in here, but they're not addressed in here. So if somebody is supporting,
That's a good point.
thing, what are they? Should this be proponents and or opponents?
yeah,
Or whatever the time frame, deadline.
Yes, sir. I agree. I think that maybe if there's a threshold for the appellant to submit things that you would consider like exhibits, I think it makes sense to, have that be a separate threshold from neighbors who are in support or opposition to send an email in. And, if that can't be one day, that's fine. Or if there's, I would like to take a look at how we can make sure that we're getting that and capturing that stuff that comes in those last 3 or 5 days that are, people see the sign, they walk past it a bunch of times, and then they're like, oh, I forgot to send that email,
Obviously, we don't want an undue burden on staff, but if this was electronic, then hopefully it wouldn't be. So.
Yeah. And maybe it might be advisable for us to add some language to this that addresses the board's discretion to waive the rules.
Or to accept comments.
In the interest of providing a fair hearing or whatever the goal might be.
It's just that the burden is so much higher to come in here with 8 printed copies than it is to send an email. If there's any other stuff that we want to get on record, I'm happy to reach out to staff before our next meeting to kind of talk about these issues that we've brought up, and y'all are welcome to individually as well. Sure. We can't really discuss it outside of this meeting between us, but you can work with staff to give your input to them. Okay. I believe. Alex, is that all correct? Okay.
So do we need to make a motion to defer this topic?
Yes.
All
I
right.
believe we should defer. We're only hearing the first rule right now.
Right.
I think the second rule. I move to defer the change of conflict of interest, section D. Move to defer that rule change to the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, can I see a show of hands? Okay. We will defer that segment, and I think we can very quickly handle the procedure matter. Mac, do you want to read that?
Number 6, procedure, Part B, meetings shall be scheduled for once each month, each calendar year, unless otherwise changed by the board. In cases where the meeting dates conflict with holidays or political elections, the secretary may reschedule the meeting to avoid the conflict with these dates. Meetings shall be held in the Metro office building at 800 2nd Avenue South unless alternate site is necessary. And the post change would read, Number 6, procedure, Part B, meetings shall be scheduled for once each month, each calendar year, unless otherwise changed by the board. In cases where the meeting dates conflict with holidays or political elections, the secretary may relocate or reschedule the meeting to avoid conflict with these dates. Meetings shall be held at the Metro office building at 800 2nd Avenue South unless an alternate site is necessary.
I think that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got no comments. I'm supportive of this.
Yep.
Good. Okay. I move, good. Okay.
I second.
I second. Show of hands? Okay, that rule change will go into effect, and we will discuss the other one next time. Do I see some new attendees? Do we have appellants before us? What's the case number, Mac, that we were waiting on?
Case number is 2022-37, Tyler and Chatty Barra.
We're getting an Airbnb permit
Yes, your name?
Evan Pratt. They're neighbors.
Oh, super. You're here in opposition? Okay, well, we haven't seen the appellants yet.
Yep.
Right here.
It doesn't appear so.
Doesn't appear so. And I'm so sorry that you've come. And we opened the public hearing to handle some procedural stuff, but we're going to call it at 15 minutes if we haven't seen the appellants appear.
Can we give our testimony?
So let's give us an opportunity to discuss that, because I think that means that we can't defer the case, which we're supposed to. So, Alex?
Yeah, it's basically a deferral by rule, so they can't have a public hearing today. Unfortunately, they'll have to come back at the next meeting.
In the event that you
They just get to choose when they can have a public hearing.
They only get one deferral by rule.
Okay.
Is that correct, Alex?
That's better.
Apologies.
In the event that you're unable
very
to
sorry.
attend the next meeting, you can always submit your comments through email or letter.
If it makes you feel any better, we all showed up today too. So.
Yeah.
And we're very sorry, and it was very good of you to take the time. We know that everyone has busy schedules, and we really encourage you to come back next month, because we will hear this case or dispose of this case in one way or another. So please, if you can possibly come back, we would welcome it, and we apologize for the inconvenience.
Is it not supposed to be here to send an email?
We take no position on that.
And I would definitely mention in your email that you did attend the
Yeah.
first meeting in which the deferral took place.
Yeah. So, very sorry, you guys.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
Yeah, it's 119.
Okay. So we are going to defer case, thank you.
2022-37.
Case number 37 until the September hearing, yeah? I don't think I need to make a motion, right?
It's deferred by rule, so I don't think you need much.
Fabulous. Cool. Then I deem today's meeting closed. Today's hearing closed. Thank you.
Good to see y'all for 20 minutes.
Bye. My car's not going to even heat it up. It's great.
I know, right? Exactly. My air conditioning should still be, yeah.
So what did these folks come for? Does anyone know?
I'm not sure, actually.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.